Scratch preferred the private room clients to serving downstairs. They were already seated when he came in, sometimes in silence, sometimes engaged in quiet chatter. Private room clients always had an agenda, to sell each other something, or escape the universe's noise. They rarely interacted with him, selecting their musical preference along with their meal choice on their screens. Their plates appeared on their settings as he walked up the stairs and slipped in. Tonight, the lighting was muted green thanks to the moon Verda being strongest in the sky. It was named for its color and the truth tradition said must be spoken beneath its light. Business beings held important negotiations when Verda was out. Investors were more trusting then. The clients were shadows limned in viridian, heads bent together over the table, exchanging whispers. A romantic rendezvous then, not strictly a business meeting, Scratch assumed as he sat at the piano. Their portion of the room was a balcony suspended in the city's heights. Glass usually vaulted in, but these clients had slid all the panels back, and the breeze was warm. The whispers were for their own ambiance only. Dampeners ensured even shouts wouldn't leave their private room. No one could overhear them except Scratch, and he remained dutifully neutral about things he heard. His hooked fingers pranced across the keys, and the requested genre flowed over the thin hedge separating him from the murmuring clients. Soft, but urgent. Persistent, but subtle. The melody was a hunter slinking through undergrowth, promising a pounce, a shot, a sting. Scratch leaned to the mic, pincers swinging wide so as not to interfere as he spilled a mountain range of syllables. The words didn't mean anything. His lyrics never did and never would. Music was its own language, and he would not taint it with another. Clients in private rooms didn't question this. They either understood what the music conveyed, or they didn't care. Yet he preferred private room clients. Downstairs he had to take orders, and because he had to listen to what they wanted, they thought they could talk to him. They thought they had an open invitation to ask questions. Thousands of species filled the universe, and each one asked about parts of his body and why it was different from theirs. Why were his eyes faceted and big? Why were his arms like wooden branches, and why did he have 4? Was he wearing a skirt? If the wing-like appendages overlapping his lower half weren't a skirt, was he wearing anything underneath? No, because no one made garments for whatever kind he was, and they were wings of a sort. They resembled a mix of butter and dragonfly wings, varying in color and translucency like stained glass, and if he vibrated them just so, he could slightly hover. They were delicate, and if they ripped, it hurt like death, but they healed. "Where are you from?" was the most popular question, and the one that always required an answer. When someone asked about his undergarments, another would shush them, or he could reasonably stomp away. Not so with the simple, "Where are you from?" Sometimes he would answer he was from this restaurant. By his quick calculation, he had spent 92.2% of his life here, and that figure grew day by day, so that should count for something. The Dajlanaika, he would say other times, never chiding them for not having heard of it. There were millions of worlds in the galaxy, each with thousands of cities. If pressed, he'd make some reference like it was far, far away, or second star to the right and straight on till morning. They'd laugh and move on. Many pretended to know where Dajlanaika was. Some threw out bits of incorrect trivia, and he gave them the benefit of the doubt. They had misheard the 5 syllables of something they knew. Sapient minds did that, say a misspelled word and supply a recognizable assumption. Scratch didn't correct them, didn't tell them that they couldn't know because the Dajlanaika didn't exist. He had made it up, blindly thumbing letters on his screen, then trimming it into something that looked pronounceable. He would never utter the name of his birthplace. His mother had made him promise not to every day of his young life. She would whisper it in his ear, a secret between them. This single syllable represented all they had been, were, and would be. He must never speak it louder than she had, and never to anyone who didn't already know. He had looked like her then, a crown of golden feathers around a circular face with a puckered, fleshy mouth and small, still-faceted eyes. They had thick tissue over an inner skeleton and wings like a proper butterfly's, if jagged, that couldn't hold their weight at all, but dripped droplets of moonlight. Not green moonlight like Berda's truth, blue like Azu, the moon of tragedy. She supplied no explanation for their secrecy, and when he grew old enough to require one, he needed look no further than his changing body. He was an abomination, likely to be culled from the gene pool, so they hid from their own. Was it so bad to let him live? He had never hurt anyone, and he didn't plan on ever procreating. All these sentiments poured into Scratch's music, shaping the song's topography and seismic draw. The clients wouldn't complain if it fit their request. Scratch found satisfaction both in letting the frustration free and in spending time with these quiet clients rather than downstairs. As they sauntered through the exit, arm in arm, Scratch sent a final arpeggio in their wake, closed the piano lid, and hovered to his feet. He checked his screen, hoping for a summons to another private room, but there was none. With a sigh, he allowed himself a few moments to soak up the stillness here. If only it were something tangible he could wear like a coat to stave off the evil agents of chaos. When he swung the door aside, a child stood there, and Scratch almost shut it again. Children weren't allowed in the private rooms, and only staff were permitted in these side passages. Before Scratch could figure out what to say or whom to call, the child looked up at him with huge human eyes and spoke. "Are you the one they call the child of the Taj Lanaika? My elders desire to meet you." The last thing Scratch wanted was a reputation. They probably wished to book a private concert, which Scratch would decline. There was safety in the restaurant's regulations. Beyond its walls, clients too often assumed they could touch him. Surprisingly, the child led him upstairs to the grandest of private rooms on the top floor. A marble fountain burbled in the center of the space, surrounded by divans where heavily veiled creatures lounged. One rose and grabbed Scratch's hands. He backpedaled, determined to extricate himself, and an odd clicking came from their linked limbs. Gripping Scratch's clawed fingers was a way for a soft creature to lose a pound of flesh, but this offender had the same steely hooks. Not only that, peering through the veils, Scratch noted the faceted eyes, wood-like exoskeleton, and skirt of wings. "You look like me."
"Of course, my lost child."
His father, Scratch figured, set him on a divan and sat alongside him with quiet eagerness. All the veiled creatures were like him.
"We are called Tatajlaki. Even the child sent to fetch you. He is your cousin, the offspring of my sibling, but he is young yet, and so still resembles his surrogate."
Scratch tilted his head, mind running in several circles. 1, he didn't like the form of communication's invasive nature. 2, when he had trimmed his keyboard smash into something pronounceable, his subconscious must have known the real name of his species since it ended up so close. 3, did they consider him naked without the veils, or was he still enough of a child like his cousin for it not to matter? The 4th he said aloud. "A surrogate?"
"We conceive alone,"
his parent explained with a nod.
"but we need another to carry the child. We had a symbiotic relationship with our natural surrogates, but they are now extinct, and we are endangered."
"So you use a different surrogate species?" A pressure, an eagerness nudged the inside of Scratch's skull, like air sent through a flute without enough force to form a true tone. His parent wanted him to speak in his mind, but he wouldn't. He didn't know how, nor did he want to.
"Our search for a new surrogate relationship has borne little success. We allow them into the family, of course, and shower them with luxury. Yet your surrogate ran for no reason we can fathom. She stole you, and she covered her tracks well."
The word "stole" stood louder than all those around it. His mother, he would not deny her that title yet, had stolen him.
"Her cruelty hollowed my heart, but I fear what it has done to you."
His parents' claws cupped the side of Scratch's face.
"At least she did not succeed in consuming you."
Scratch's pincers widened. "She never tried to."
"Good. Perhaps there is still a hope for a relationship with her kind. Others did try. We call them enemies now."
"I see what you mean about your search not going well." Scratch fluttered his wings and rose to back away. He had never thought he would meet others like him. Apparently he wasn't a freak. The thought sat in his chest, warm and soft, but cloying because they would expect something from him. That certainty dripped, lacking any heat, and spread its chill to the tip of each appendage. He wanted them to leave, but he couldn't force that. They were clients, high-paying ones, to afford this room. So he would leave instead, even if it meant serving tables downstairs. His parents stood too and wrapped him in 4 branch-like arms.
"She was of a short-lived species and knew she would not see you grown. We are not made to be alone, especially when young. I am so sorry that you were."
Scratch rattled, wanting to be anywhere but in his cage of limbs. "I have not suffered."
"Oh, but you must have without your family. But everything will be all right. You are with us now.
It wasn't all right, though. He didn't want this hug, nor did he want them to own him, family or not.
If my mother, surrogate,
Scratch ignored the interruption,
stole me, then she gifted me my freedom. Do not be ridiculous.
No, they were ridiculous. Scratch's claws tangled in his parents' veils. Perhaps it was childish, but if his family would force discomfort upon him, he would dispense it back. He ducked out of his parents' embrace, pulling fabric with him. Yet more came free than should have. The unsheathed talons could have been explained as adult versions of his own, covered for practicality, but the wings came off with the disguise too, and part of one eye. The unveiled creature's mouth folded downward in a way Scratch's never could, and it raised a hand of blade-like fingers, each as long as Scratch's arm.
New Year's is tonight, and my family will not be deprived of traditional Dashlanki roast.
Scratch backed toward the staff door. I'll check the menu. The others rose and surrounded him, veils and disguises dropping like autumn leaves.
No need.
Whether or not these impostors spoke truth about his apparently endangered species, Scratch had never asked for details, and he didn't need to know now. He had his own truth, and it had nothing to do with their traditions. You're mistaken. See, I'm a child of the Dashlanaika. As he leapt over the rail, fluttered onto a balcony, and tore down the stairs to get the manager, Scratch determined he no longer preferred private room clients.